Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. We are doing another session of Mealworms and More. We will get started at 4 after for our typical SOP around here. So we'll wait for folks to join and roll from there. Good morning. As folks start to trickle in, we'll get started at 4 after. Welcome, welcome. If anybody could do a quick, hey Keith, good morning, a quick audio and video check for me and let me know how things are rolling today. Great, and awesome. Thank you, Keith. Thank you. It's been a busy morning already, so I'm a little tired, and it's only 10 o'clock. Cleaned up a bunch of stuff in the farm and got orders ready this morning for a couple pickups. And then I moved 800 pounds of frass, I think. We're going to take that over to Ben's farm midday here, so he can do some playing. All right, welcome to the folks that are joining. We are 2 minutes in. We'll wait till 4 after the hour and we'll get started. Let more folks join, get past any technical issues. Terry, thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. For the folks that are here, if you guys have any questions, any topics you want to chat about, the farm is actually open. Nobody's in there. Leo will be here this afternoon. So I timed this one so we could go into the farm if we need to. If you guys have any questions about seeing anything. But if you have any general questions or topics you want to chat through, start throwing those in the comments and we'll tackle them when we get started here in a minute. Reverse nurtured letters backwards on the camera. I bet there's a technical way to fix that, and I'm just not fancy enough to figure it out. But it has crossed my mind. The same thing happens on most of my video. I take via TikTok. The way that you can edit things in TikTok is pretty simple, and their captions work really well. But unfortunately, they don't have a flip yet, so everything's backwards. Hey, Rodney. Good to see you. Do you also miss your superworm pupa? No, I do not. They seem far more prone to moisture issues. So what I've been noticing, I don't miss the mealworm pupa anymore either. So I had done that a while back, and what I found is that was causing a lot of die-off. Let me fix my tag. That was causing a lot of die-off, and so I stopped doing that and went to lower humidity in the farm overall to help with the superworms. And so far the pupa are doing okay. I would like to see that increase a bit, or the death decrease. But that'll be an item to tackle once I get a couple other major things done. All right, we're 5 after. I missed the 4 after. I started talking. So welcome everybody to a Friday edition, Friday the 13th, of Mealworms and More. So my name is Justin Meyer. I'm an admin in the Mealworm Farming Co-op group on Facebook. We try to do these every week, get the group together and talk through any questions anybody has, any topics, anything that's going on with mealworms, anything that's going on with your colony, in your colony, whether you're brand new, whether you've been doing this for a while. Please share any questions that you've got, any successes. We like to hear those as well so that we can all improve and get better. But this is an open forum for you guys to ask questions, provide feedback to folks to questions here if you'd like to. I mentioned this earlier, but the farm, the insect room is open. So we can go in there this morning. I prepped a couple orders, but it's been filtered out, exhausted, particulates are low, so we can go in there and I won't have to wear the mask. Leo will be here this afternoon, so it's open and we can go in there if we need to. Lots of progress on the sifter this week. Posted a video of that recently, posted it to the co-op group as well. But anything you guys want to cover, let me know. This is going to be recorded, and all the comments are recorded by Facebook. So when we post it into the co-op group, you'll be able to see all the comments here. You'll be able to see the recording, so that you don't have to worry about furiously taking notes or missing anything. Sit back and enjoy, and if there's something that piques your interest and you want to check it out later, it'll be posted in the group. This will also be posted to YouTube under the Midwest Mealworms channel, so it can try to reach a broader group and get more people to our group here. So, with that being said, if I miss any questions, comments, or anything, please tag me or send me a direct message. Every now and then, Facebook doesn't show me everything. So, we are at, let's see, Terry, I'm new to the idea of growing mealworms. I just want to start my own farm for my chickens. Awesome. You're in the perfect place. So the group here is very receptive and open to new people who have never done this. A couple suggestions. Go check the files in the Mealworm Farming Co-op group. There's a lot of good info there. And then do a search in the group for, like in your particular case, search for chickens or chicken. And you'll get, hopefully a lot of posts will come up. There should be quite a few because chickens are a popular reason for folks to raise mealworms. Do a quick search and start just kind of seeing what folks have put out there. We've had a lot of folks ask questions of how do I start, what size farm do I need, etc. So doing a quick search in the group is a good way to get rolling, and then start posting questions in the group, and we'll answer. Folks will reply and help you out. We're here to help you. I started with chickens myself about 8 years ago now, and so the chickens are gone, but all the mealworms are still here. Karen, hello from Maryland. Hello. Trina, got a new 10-week-old puppy for Christmas. Oh man, she follows me on working in the worms. Found her in the middle of one of the tubs of frass, tossing it around like sand. Looked very cute, but not happy with the mess. I bet not. Yeah, the animals, mealworms are actually starting to be put into pet feed, dog and cat food, as a nutrient additive and for the protein. And my understanding is they're taking the mealworms, and I think like some of the products they're extracting the oil out of the mealworm and using that. Some of them are taking the entire mealworm, so there's lots of different ways that they're doing that. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. You'll find that your animals might be drawn to those mealworms. The frass was probably just puppy wanting to play, right? Bryce, good morning. Good morning. Things are well. I'm a little tired. I don't know if you were here when I mentioned earlier, but I moved about 800 pounds of frass this morning. We're going to take that over to Ben's farm and get it in the mix over there. So I'm already a little bit tired. Mohammed, welcome. Good to see you again. Is 64 to 68 Fahrenheit bad for pupa? Bad? No. So from a temperature perspective, the range that you want to try to hit is 78 degrees Fahrenheit to 80. Mealworms can actually thrive in higher temperatures up to 85. I like to give myself a little wiggle room, so I recommend the 78 to 80 Fahrenheit, because if something were to happen, and because this did happen to me, if something were to happen in your farm with the temperature and it spiked and went up, you have more room, more wiggle room to take care of that problem before it becomes a big issue for the colony. And so this happened to me a few years ago. Now it's probably been 5 years ago. My air conditioner busted right before one of the hottest days of the year. And so it was supposed to be 100 that day. and I had time to go and address that, get that air conditioning replaced and fixed before it started to get too hot in the day. So if you go lower than that, so if you go lower than the optimal temperature, that's not a problem. Mealworms will still survive. They will reproduce. They will continue the colony. You'll get mealworms. It's just going to start taking a little longer. What you'll find is there will be a delay in production, or a slowdown in production, where they're going to lay less eggs. The larvae are going to grow not as fast, but they will grow. So if 64 to 68 is what your ambient temperature is, and that's a constant and a norm, that's not a problem. It just means it's going to lengthen out the time for those things to grow. That's all. Brandon. So I see a bunch of questions below Brandon. So I'm at Brandon's question right now. Benjamin and Trina will tackle that, your stuff here in a sec. Brandon, so have you ever tried a mesh tray for beetles? I saw a video from EU where they had a mesh 2mm hardware cloth tray that sat on top of the wheat bran with a little tray. That would really interest me for beetle transfer as opposed to dumping them through a sifter. Yes. I've tried, so two methods I've tried in the past, and one that I'm going to move to here in the very near future. So I've tried the elevated method where you have your substrate here and your mesh is above that. It's not touching the substrate. And I did not have a lot of success with that. But success for me is high volume production. And so what I found is that when it was elevated, it just wasn't as productive. I didn't see as many mealworms there. I didn't do any specific, like laboratory scientific tests. I had trays of mealworms or beetles in the standard way that I did it, where the beetles are in the bran, and then I had a tray of beetles, several trays of the mesh where it was above the substrate. And what I found is that they just didn't produce as much. I don't know why, right? Like there might be a way to tackle that, but it wasn't something I could figure out at the time, and so I stopped doing it. The other method that I've done that was successful is where the mesh sits on the bran. And so the blue trays that I use now, there's actually a product coming out that is an insert into that. So a few months ago, I think I posted some videos on this brand, and I can't remember if I did or not into the co-op group or if it was on one of my other channels, but I built my own mesh insert basically. It was 1/8 inch chicken wire with some aluminum sides to keep, slick sides to keep them in. And the intent was, what I would like to be able to do is when we do beetle swap, you take that tray and just boop, plop those beetles from that insert into another tray. Makes it really fast. But production needs to continue. And what I found was it was working. And so I looked into making my own, and that's when I got wind of potential inserts happening. So I waited, and lucky enough, everything's worked out, and hopefully I can get some here in the next several months so that we can really start scaling things up. But yeah, the mesh insert is a really good way. Folks have used that in the past. It's a simple way to not have to deal with beetle swap. You just keep throwing beetles in, especially in a one tray system or one container system. So it's definitely something that can work there. Benjamin, any tips on fighting grain mites? Yes. Let me check. I've got a page on my website, and I think there's a bunch of info. If you search the co-op group for grain mites or mites, you'll find a ton of information there. Sorry, I'm plugging in my internet. There we go. You'll find a ton of information there, and then MidwestMealworms.com/mites or grain mites. So I've got some protocols on my page that might be helpful. So MidwestMealworms.com. Yeah, I'll get this posted as a response to your question here. This link, MidwestMealworms.com/pages/mites. But I'll post it as a reply. So mites in general, like you can get past it. I've had mites 3 times. Lower your humidity, reduce moisture that you add to the trays, and if you need to sequester those trays, put them in water, like a tray of water, so that the mites will go anywhere. But if you put it in a tray of water, build like a moat around your trays, depending on how big of a system you have, that would work. Split pea flour can be used. as a killer for the mites, and it doesn't affect the mealworms. Some people add that proactively to their colony. I'm going to start doing that once I'm going through too much substrate to be able to deep freeze it all the time. And so you can add it proactively, or you can add it as a reactive measure when you have an outbreak. So I actually take that split pea flour, I will take it and put it inside the bin. I'll also sprinkle it on the ground. I have the luxury of having concrete here in the farm, but even if I had carpet, if I had mites, I would probably, like if it was a serious outbreak, I would consider doing it if I didn't have a place to relocate that bin and not have it on that carpet to put split pea flour around it. Trina, spiders. There isn't a day I don't find a spider in my worm room, either in a tub, on the wall, and a new web. The spiders love the mealworms. I was actually just cleaning, or not cleaning, we were sifting yesterday, Ben and I, or the day before, and I dumped one in and a spider fell out. And so I kind of wrapped the tray around it, took it outside and let it go. They love to eat the mealworms. Caitlin, welcome. Good to see you. Benjamin, I was thinking predatory mites to eat the grain mites and their eggs. You're just adding more mites to mites. From a mealworm farming perspective, there's not a benefit to do that, as far as I've seen, because I don't know what introducing predatory mites to take care of the grain mites would do. So, like, I've heard of people doing that, especially in the cannabis world, in the plant world, doing that with their plants. It might work. I've never heard anybody try it, but I would try the split pea flour before I add another insect to the mix to tackle an insect that you don't want. Felicia, good to see you. Some good answers from Felicia on the split pea flour there. All right, I'm trying to catch up. I'm scrolling. I'm at Felicia Benjamin. I cut the bottom of the container out and throw wheat bran in the bin. Oh, that was for the for the mesh stuff, right? I cut the bottom of the container out and throw wheat bran in the bin. Yes. So what I did when I tested was I cut, similar to my sifting trays. I made a video recently of the tower tray sorter that I built, and and so I cut out those, like the middle of that, and put the screen in there, and that would work perfectly well for a beetle production as well. So multi-use. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks that have joined. If you guys have any questions, throw them into the chat here. We have got, let's see, we'll be here till the top of the hour. I do have a customer coming to pick up shortly after the top of the hour, so I'll have to wrap things up pretty much on time. But if you guys have anything that you'd like to see, the farm is open. We can go into there if we need to. If you have any questions about something you've seen or want to look at. This week was a big week success for me. Just to get the ball rolling there with successes. Hopefully you guys have had some too. We got the new horizontal sifter working. So we were able to successfully sift out harvestable mealworms, pupa and beetles, which I think is going to be a problem of the past, and I'll go over that in a moment. We were able to separate the frass from everything to get some good clean frass, and we were able to get the medium, or the small to medium collected so that we could put those back into the colony to continue to grow. So we Ben timed it. We got done in 30 minutes doing an entire row, which would have taken us 2.5 to 3 hours of manual labor, doing it the way we're doing it today. So super excited about that. Extremely relieved. I've been messing with this sifter for a while now, and it got to the point where the hours we're putting in sifting, it needs to get better. Especially with the ramp up in production that we've got planned. So we got that working. A couple things to improve that. We're going to put it on its own table so we can move it around and not take up space on the current table it was on. And it's a little too high. We were lifting things up and pouring in, so there's no reason it can't be lower so that we can pour in without having to use that energy to lift up and save that energy for other things. And then I need to improve the size. So the current top sieve is it's a custom built. A local metal worker here made it for me, laser cut it, and we need bigger openings. I might try mesh though, so I'm just going to put some chicken wire on there, some 1/8 inch mesh, and see how that works from a vibration perspective with the mealworms. I'm using mesh on the bottom layer to separate out the frass, but the sorry, I just saw a text come through from a customer. So the bottom layer has mesh to separate out the frass. I'm not sure how the mealworms are going to react to the vibration and the movement going down. That's why I initially went with the cuts or the openings as opposed to mesh. But I'll try the mesh and see how that goes as well. And I'll get all that posted and whatnot so that everybody can see that. But good things happening there with the sifter. So that means we can ramp up production from the back end, the harvesting perspective. So it was taking us hours and hours and hours to do this stuff. It needed to be better. We can fit more trays in that room, which means we can scale up production to raise more mealworms. So the goal is to get that sifter fine-tuned so that we can just plug and play, get in there, do what we need to do. And then the other end of production with the beetles, when we get those tray inserts, those things are going to make, like right now we're just shaking every single tray to sift out the bran from the beetles. And so that takes a pretty long time, and it's just a lot of labor too. So we're going to fix that with those tray inserts, and then we will ramp things up. So good things coming. Nathan, welcome, welcome. All right. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to see? Anything you guys are struggling with that the group can help out with? Let me know. Sue. Good to see you, Sue. You should try to survive. It may take a little longer to change the beetles. If you could bump the temperature to the 70s, it would be ideal. Yep, I agree with that. Benjamin, why do some beetles sometimes come out deformed? Couple reasons. So deformities are normal in nature, so you're going to see some. Even in perfect, optimal, fantastic conditions, you'll see some scenarios where you've got deformities, you've got random die-off, as long as it's a very small percentage. If you're seeing every single beetle deformed, then something's going on. And what's usually going on is a lack of hydration or moisture. Either right before, so lack of hydration right before they go into the pupa stage, or during pupation if it gets too dry. So anything below 40% humidity is going to get pretty dry from a pupa perspective. And so they'll start drying out and you'll see more of a die-off there. I tried to go to the reverse route and really up the humidity for pupa. I did a test of that in the grow tent that I have, and it did not go well. And a couple people told me it would not go well. So kudos to the folks that knew that. And so right now we have got the farm running at 50% average humidity. It got a little high the last few days with the weather, but that's what we're trying to aim for. So if you don't have, if you're in a really arid place, Benjamin, and that's going on with you, from a pupa perspective, you could build a microenvironment. So depending on what sort of setup you've got, if your pupa are in a container, that maybe has a lid, you could look at putting a lid on it to help hold some of that moisture in. Be careful of temperature increases in the farm though. The other thing folks have done is, like, if you've got the drawers that come out, you could put a lightly misted paper towel. Don't put it directly on the pupa. Move the pupa out of the way, put the paper towel down, and that can help disperse some humidity there, build a little microclimate for the mealworms. Sue, wondering if I was tickled to see your sifter video last night. Saw a few things to tweak, but overall you're on the right track, I think. Thank you. Let me know what to tackle there. The primary things that I wanted to do were the sifting of the frass. I don't want to have to resift, mess with it again on that side as it comes out, but every now and then a mealworm pops through. And so I think that's just a mechanism for a result from the vibration, and every now and then something's going to come in and then bounce backwards, or one of the sides potentially. And so I don't think it's something I'm going to worry about trying to like stop from happening. But what I'm going to do is build a little filter on the end of that, with some mesh and a catch, basically, that the frass will come through, it'll keep shaking, it'll fall through that, and then catch the mealworms. So it's like a secondary quick sift to catch those mealworms. And then the other thing was to try to catch the stuff that, the bran or the chitin, or the exoskeletons. I'd like to capture those with a little fan suction setup. So a couple things coming. Bryce, good to see you. You will get the right slotted screens from a grain seed equipment supplier. They mostly use 64th mesh, so your 8 mesh is 6/64 and 1/8 is 8/64. Okay, I gotta write that down. Thank you, Bryce. Put me on the right track, saving me some time. Grain seed equipment supplier. All right, and I'm going to go back and look at that comment. I'm going to take my own advice and not get caught up too much in that. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Benjamin, so you have a separate room for pupas, worms, beetles? I do not. So everything is currently in one room. I don't think, I'm trying to think historically if I've ever had separate rooms for the separate stages, and I don't think I have. There are some variations that would be optimal. Like if you're really gearing towards super efficient and specific, like pupa need this, the larvae need this, beetles need that, you could go that route, but I haven't done that myself. They do well, in the current scenario, and I think that separating them out into different rooms and creating different environments, while that might be optimal to increase production and efficiency, I think it creates more inefficiencies in having separate rooms until you get to such a scale that it actually makes sense. And so I don't anticipate that I will get to that scale and need that. I think everything in one room is efficient right now. Once we have that room at top max production, then we can look at, does it make sense to do something different at that point? But right now, it's not something I'm concerned with causing inefficiencies. I think it's working better than the alternative. You should make a podcast. I'll listen. Lots of questions here. I do have one. It's called Mealworms and More. What I need to do better is gearing towards that potentially, and then getting the audio from these things and getting it uploaded. It's difficult sometimes, though, to follow this style of Q&A in a podcast, but I can probably get better at that. That's definitely a good suggestion. I haven't posted out to the podcast in quite a while, but I do get these. I do post these out to the Midwest Mealworms YouTube channel. So I had some questions and some requests from folks there because they don't come to Facebook. And eventually, what I'd like to get to is I need to test out StreamYard. Wally from Supreme Geckos did an interview with me late last year and used StreamYard, and I really liked it. It was a very cool platform that allowed us to engage with folks across multiple different Facebook, YouTube, etc. So I need to play with that, but my primary focus is getting that sifter working and getting the process, getting all that tackled, so that we can get that squared away. So good things coming. Nathan, good morning. Listening as I drive home. Just can't watch right. Yes, don't watch the screen. Watch the road. Thank you. Drive careful. Oh, here we go. Sue responding on the sifter. Mainly it was the width and angles of the paths to the bins the various products land in. They're not lining up well, and I saw spillage. Yes, there was some of that, especially so what I did not... Oh, and I forgot. I was going to mention this, and then I totally forgot about it. I think we're going to fix a problem that we're having and not have to figure out... We're going to avoid a problem and not have to figure out a solution. So in that video, the stack that we were sorting, or the row that we were sorting, sorry, I think it was 5 or 6 stacks, we have gotten behind. So what's happening now is with our current sifting process taking so long, we're not able to keep up and sift it when we need to. And so what I thought we were going to have to do is, right now we're having trays where we get pupa that hatch into beetles. And that should not be occurring in those harvestable trays, because what happens then is those beetles are going to start laying eggs, and I'm going to get eggs in the frass, and then I can't sell that frass, because I don't want people getting mealworms in their frass. I don't want that. And so what you saw in that video, Sue, was we were sifting a row that we had gotten behind on. And so what I think will happen now is, and the temporary fix I put in place there was that cement mixing tray with the mesh on the bottom to separate out the pupa and the big ones and the beetles. In the future, as we're able to keep up, because that run took us 30 minutes, and it usually takes us 2.5 to 3 hours. And so that efficiency gain is enormous. And my hope is that we avoid that problem where we don't get things done because we run out of time. And so that, what I'm hoping is we don't have that scenario where those, like once we see those trays get to the point where they need to be harvested, we can do it with the time that we have. And so ideally we then avoid that pupa beetle thing, and I can probably fix something to that chute to make it better. I want to get the sifter on its own table and a little lower, and start retrofitting at that point. So proof of concept worked with that putting some volume through it, and now we're going to fine tune it. Good suggestions though, and keep them coming. As you guys see stuff that you think would be beneficial, please let me know, because my intent is to get this thing situated and get a process, and then get all of this documented. So the manufacturer of the motors, the device, I'm also going to have the metal worker give me a quote. Once it's all built and done, get me a quote on building one here. The sifter itself was constructed and built in China. And so it was shipped over. I actually bought it from someone in Canada, but they had sourced it from China. So I'm curious once I have it done, what's it going to cost to build it here, just to get that number, because I'm curious. And then share all of that publicly. The plans, all the specs, all the things here. So if you guys have thoughts or ideas that you want to see there, DM them to me. If you don't want it public, shoot it to me, whatever. But the goal is to get this figured out so that we can build the blueprint and just publish it out there for everybody. Man, I really don't like the scrolling here on Facebook. I say that every time. Wally, does the scrolling work better in StreamYard? Oh. Donna, my beetles hatch, but a lot of them just dry up and die while others are fine. Why? Donna, what's your humidity and what's your feed regimen for your beetles as they hatch, or what's your process for your beetles as they hatch? Are you using like a pupa bridge to elevate them so they fall off and they can get access to feed quickly? Do you get your beetles once a week? Like, what's my thought is potentially the beetles dry up and die while others are fine. You'll have some die-off. Die-off is normal and natural. A lot though, like if you've got more than 2, 3, 4% of die-off, you can probably tackle something there. And my thought is access to hydration, and that's a tricky thing. Like you don't want to put too much hydration in there and waste product, but at the same time you want to have something available, or routinely collect those beetles. We do it 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sometimes I come in on the weekend and do it just to get it done, but away we go with that. Wally, good to see you, sir. I didn't say hello. Donna, hello to you too. I'm sorry, guys. I'll get better at that. Sifter is cool. Yes, sir. I was excited, relieved, and excited. How do you know if your pupa is dead? Oh, Keith, thank you for replying. I didn't see this. I've got several other harder lines. Softly pinch the tail with your fingers or tweezers. If it twitches, it's alive. I like to pinch the head and then watch the tail wiggle. But if you hold the tail, then they'll still wiggle, right? So same principle, same concept. If they start turning gray black, they're unfortunately toast at that point. Wally, to kill the eggs, if the same issue occurs in the future, could you put the frass in big black garbage cans outside in the summer to cook the eggs? Yes, heat treating or deep freezing. Same principle as with the substrate. If you heat or freeze it, you will destroy those things. What was I going to say about that? The problem with that, maybe it's not a problem. It's a use application impactor. I don't have a better way to say that. So frass is a really good bioactive product. And what I mean by that is it's going to have a lot of good organic material, microbiome type stuff in there. Like there's good bacteria, bad bacteria. There are good germs, bad germs, etc. Frass is going to have some good things in it as long as it's been taken care of, as long as the colony's been taken care of. You can also inoculate your colony with different things that you would potentially want to have in your frass to then feed to your plants, and it will be available that way as well. If you if you heat or freeze that, though, you're going to potentially kill off that beneficial microbiology that's in there. And so what I try to do is I don't want to process that frass at all. And so if we get eggs in it, what we use that for is our own tinkering here. I use that in my garden because the mealworms don't freak me out if I do see them in there. If I know there's eggs in there, I'm going to keep it, and then I just use it there, and it doesn't bother me. They're not going to, even though they could survive in Missouri, they're not going to like start infesting and go wild. It's not like releasing reptiles down in Florida. Don't want to do that. If you're, if you have a customer who's buying your frass and they're doing that anyway, they might potentially have to do that if they're going to sell that on shelves or something like that, then it may not be a problem for them. Wally, yes, much better in StreamYard, but you cannot see the Facebook chat. Oh, we'll have to play with that a little bit. That stinks. Kayla, welcome. For some reason, the scroll comments actually work for me today. Good. Yeah, there were problems last week, Sue. I did not see your message until real late after that. I'm glad it's working today. Steph, welcome. Helen, good to see you. Has anyone ever used an insect booster as was given some for free but unsure about it? Insect booster. What is insect booster? Like a feed? A substrate? If that's the path you're going, Helen, let me know with a quick reply. There's various options here in the U.S. For things like that. Missouri, Mazuri, makes a few insect feed products, and I know that there are a lot of folks interested in adds to the feed. Okay, I know there are a lot of folks interested in trying to make a feed specific to an insect. So like mealworm feed for mealworms. They have different nutritional needs than other insects. And so right now what's happening is things are starting to get very, very precise. And so folks are starting to try to test out feed specific for mealworms to make that product available for the market. Some folks already have that. I think Missouri has one or is building one. It wasn't available in small quantities when I checked into it 3 years ago at the time, but they do make that. In my perspective on that, two things. My goal with this farm is not how do I say this politely and not make anybody mad? We're just going to say it. My goal with this farm is not to be as operationally efficient so operationally efficient that we aren't doing things that everyone else is going to be doing. And what I mean by that is if I can buy a mealworm specific feed at a reasonable cost and use that to feed the farm here and produce mealworms, I don't know if I would do that until it becomes an option that anyone can have access to, because my goal with this is to prove out different feeds, different things, use what's available around you to integrate it into systems that are already in place. And so the feed, it's like when I say wheat bran, that might not be something, Helen, you can get in Australia in the same nutritional scenario that we have here. And I'm pulling wheat bran out of the air, right? But similarly, if I were to start using a specific custom blend feed from a manufacturer that was proprietary, that nobody else could get outside of the U.S., it defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to achieve long term. So I I personally, like, I've tinkered with a lot of different stuff. I've tried oats, I've tried spent grains, I've tried brewer's yeast, all these different things that I throw in there and play with just to tinker, just to see what happens. But my goal is to not integrate that in all the time yet. Unless it becomes a, wow, this is fantastic and we can figure out ways for everybody to tackle it. The other thing is, what was the other thing? Cost in versus savings or gains. And so, like, you could give mealworms unmedicated chick feed, and they will grow faster, but your cost is higher. So there's a tipping point there, right? Like, you've got to analyze what it costs to produce that mealworm over its life, over its 2 to 3 month or more, you know, whatever that time frame is for you, what it costs to produce that, and what the feed costs are, and then determine, is there a way, like, is there a tipping point where if you put more money into feed to get higher nutrition, is the duration of their growth short enough that it warrants that extra cost? Does it actually save you any money? That to me, I haven't seen enough of a benefit financially where I've looked at the different various feeds available. I haven't seen that as a benefit that makes it worth integrating into the process and, you know, adding more complexity to it. So I said a lot there, and there's been a lot of comments, so I'm going to take a second and double check here what's out there. Caitlin, I accidentally missed frass for my beetles in with my other frass. Will it take longer for the eggs to hatch? I don't want to lose almost a full tray. It will. So the eggs that are there, you probably won't, like, normally you don't see mealworm or larvae until about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on your environment conditions, after they hatch. And they're going to be very tiny, very hard to sift up until that point, especially frass, right? They'll go through the sifter with the frass potentially. So you're going to need to wait a little while and let those things grow out if you're going to want to save the eggs and the larvae there. And not, you know, like, you could deep freeze it or cook it or just go use the frass and lose those eggs. But if you don't want to do that, just let it sit, let them grow. You could throw in a little bit of substrate just to see how it pans out. Throw in some moisture sources in a week or two just to see if they start going for it. Maybe you can collect some that way, that sort of thing. MD, chicken grower feed for better size or growth? Potentially, right? So here in the U.S., unmedicated chick feed has higher protein levels and a different nutrient profile in general than, say, like wheat bran or wheat midds, which is what I'm using currently. And so if you integrate something in with higher protein, you could potentially have better growth. There's probably a point where more protein is not going to be helpful for the mealworm, but I haven't messed around with that. It's not a goal I have to try to get that as efficient as possible. I'm just testing out various things to see how they react and how to build the process around that. Sue, Glenda mentioned Missouri cricket feed yesterday. I believe she mentioned buying 40-pound bags. Found his animal was very small, expensive bags, so probably won't bother trying it. I did see them on Amazon. I could get Missouri products through my wheat brand supplier, and they come in maybe it was 40-pound bags. Not ridiculously expensive, but more expensive than wheat bran. And so you may not have to use as much of it. But when I reached out to them, and again, this was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I reached out to Missouri directly and talked with one of their sales reps, and I said, "What's your feeding regimen for mealworms? Like, what's your product recommendations? What are your testers doing? How are they, an ounce of this per tray? Like, what's the recommended dosage?" And they didn't have one at the time. They were working on a mealworm specific feed, but it wasn't market ready yet, and there wasn't enough demand. And so they said, just use the earthworm diet. But they didn't have a suggested, dosage. So I put a scoop. My supplier, the earthworm thing started because my supplier had somebody order earthworm diet from Missouri and then never come pick it up. And so I went ahead and bought it at a discount, thankfully. And I put a scoop in each tray. They ate it. They did fine. Like, I tested it and made sure everything was okay before I put it in mass. But then I just used a bag and just put a scoop in each one just to give them a little extra treat. Wally, make this facility not like everyone else's so we can do things differently. I want to throw a heart emoji on that. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Big goals coming. Big goals. Has anyone ever used insect booster? Do you mean the stuff people use to gut load them for reptiles? Oh, interesting. Yep. Helen, the stuff is $80 for 500 grams, so not cheap. Oh, that Helen, Caitlin and Helen, that ties things. That might be interesting. I wonder if Helen, you might be seeing something where reptile owners, reptiles in general need different types of nutrients, and so insects alone sometimes don't have enough. Or you might have a reptile, and I don't own a reptile, so I'm only speaking on random things that I've heard and seen. Wally's probably going to laugh at me about some of this. Feel free to step in here, sir. But the reptiles need different nutrients than what insects can provide. And if you've got a reptile who's very particular, maybe they won't eat crickets, but they will eat mealworms, or they won't eat roaches, but they will eat mealworms, or vice versa, right? I'm mealworm biased here. But what they'll do is they'll get dusting powder that has nutrients in it specifically geared for the reptile that they have. And they'll basically cover the insect in that, or let the insect eat it for a little while and then feed that to their reptile. It's called gut loading. And so they'll get it in there and then they'll feed it off to the reptiles. It has calcium and vitamins in it, good for injured or young animals. Yeah, that's what that sounds like. So Helen, instead of putting that in with your mealworms to raise them, you're wasting money basically, because what they're going to do is the mealworms will eat it. It might be more nutritious for them, and that goes back to the conversation around, is it worth it to pay for that extra nutritional value to try to get them to grow faster? I'm not convinced it is, but what you're describing here is if you were to use that product and just kind of throw in a scoop, the nutrients and the benefits from that are going to be gone from that mealworm within 72 hours. And so don't claim that, hey, we fed them with this, so they're going to have it. You don't have to gut load, because they'll go through that. They'll churn through it and excrete it out into the frass within 72 hours. That's why folks do that with the mealworms. They'll do it themselves. It's a pretty standard thing that reptile folks have done. Oh, I got it right, Wally. Woo. It's getting scary. All right, Felicia. Missouri is owned by Purina, Sony supplier that you use locally that has Purina account can order Missouri feeds in bulk sizes for you if they are willing. Yep. Thank you. All right, so we are at Brandon. Typically, we just gut load reptiles with whatever veggies the reptile normally eats. There you go. Excellent. Thank you for the backup on the reptile info. I'm an insect guy. I said my beetles out of their bin. Oh, that's a reply for Caitlin. Thank you, Sue. Gut loading and dusting with supplements is very important. Wally with the assists. Mohammed, do refrigerated mealworms face problems or deformation in turning from pupa to beetles? And Wally, I see a question there. So Mohammed, do refrigerated mealworms face problems or deformation in turning from pupa to beetles? Not that I've noticed. What I have noticed is if you refrigerate pupa, you will have problems with deformities, with die-off. You will not have as many successful hatchings into beetles if you refrigerate those pupa. And my theory on that, so I've tried a couple different things in the past with refrigeration. And when I refrigerated the pupa, it had lots of die-off, way more than just leaving the pupa out, right? And my theory there is that it just dehydrates, right? So it's sucking the moisture out of the air in that fridge, and it just dehydrates those pupa. Instead of refrigerating the pupa, a lot of times what people will do is they'll refrigerate in order to slow things down because they had too many pupa all of a sudden, or something like that. Don't refrigerate the pupa. Refrigerate the mealworms, the larvae themselves. They do well in the fridge, in a standard human fridge of like 45 to 49 or 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Slows them down sufficiently, and you can basically put them in cold storage and store them for a while. If you're going to use those mealworms within 2 to 3 weeks, you don't need to go through any sort of maintenance with them. Just make sure that they're not more than 3/4. It's been a while since I've refrigerated it. Not more than 3/4 of an inch thick, and the container needs to be open, well ventilated, no lid, because the mealworms will release moisture. If you put them in something that's sealed or closed, or does not have enough ventilation, that moisture is going to then wick down, get into them, drown them, kill them, get mucky and gross. And I know that from personal experience because I did it with my trays the first time and it did not end well. So you can definitely refrigerate them. What I used to do when I did that is I would put 3/4 of an inch thick in the tray, so whatever tray size you have, 3/4 of an inch thick, and then I would sprinkle a little bit of bran in there. So I was using a dough proofing tray that was 24 by 18 inches, and I was putting in just a handful in 30,000 mealworms is what that would hold in a fridge. So not a lot, just enough for them to munch on a little bit, and they'll go through that. If you're going to utilize those mealworms within 2 to 3 weeks, no maintenance necessary. Otherwise, take them out of the fridge once a week. Give them bran that they'll be able to chew through. Typically, like one handful was at the beginning, maybe like 5. I'm trying to think of when we did this. 5 or 6 handfuls of bran. I don't have a measurement, unfortunately. I just did it by eye, so that they can eat, and then give them hydration. Let them eat for about 3 hours. After that 3 hours, take out any of the hydration that's still left. You don't want that going into the fridge with them, and then just place that back in the fridge. If you do that multiple times, like they'll survive, they'll be fine. You'll start to get some pupation, but not a lot. And then at some point, you're going to need to sift out that frass. So after probably 2 to 3 weeks, sift out the frass, and then just continue that feeding process. So. Wally, do you feel there is any additional feeds, vitamins, supplements, various greens needed in mealworm feed? No, I don't. Not at baseline. So any additional feeds, vitamins, supplement, various grains needed in mealworm feed? No. Mealworms can survive on styrofoam. And not just survive, they can thrive, right? Like they can reproduce. So surviving and thriving are two different things. Mealworms can survive on all sorts of different things. And so I don't think that, that they're geared, that they're built in such a way that if they don't have, an optimal feed, they're going to be okay. So I'm not an advocate for needing to do any sort of complicated, add this in or try to find this specific thing, or you're going to get 10 times the production if you use this feed. Because I just don't, I haven't seen the data that supports that. And the experience that I have in the various things that I tested, it also complicates things from the perspective of, like if let's pretend for a second that oats, like flattened oats, are better for mealworms. Unfortunately, they're not better from a processing perspective. They gunk up the sifters, they get in the way, they actually condense down and hold more heat. Like there are other things than just the nutrition that you have to think about as you're wrapping stuff around, should I try and test this? And so I like to keep things as simple as possible for the situation at hand. Now, oats might work perfect for, let's say, a single container for somebody that's raising a reptile, right? Because in that scenario, you're just putting everything in there. As long as it doesn't get too thick and you keep your frass under control, you're fine. Because oats are easily accessible at grocery stores, right? You don't have to have a feed supplier. And so like those are the scenarios where it's definitely worth testing out different things. And that's why I've played with some of that stuff in the past. But I don't think there's any specific thing that I would say I recommend. I have used a probiotic in the past. One of the farmers from Texas recommended that, and I got some just to play with it and see what happened. And what I noticed is there was a little bit less die-off. That part was true. But I think what I noticed was after I stopped using it, as long as I keep conditions okay and keep them fed, they're okay. And so what that told me is the probiotic was helping to offset my lack of attentiveness and proper rearing from my perspective. So it did give me wiggle room. So if you have a scenario where like maybe this is a side gig, and that's where I was at the time. If you have a scenario where this is a side gig and you need time or you don't have the time to go do, like everything that needs to be done, you could offset that by paying for probiotic and putting that in there. So there are different scenarios for everybody. Different context matters for sure. We have about 6 minutes left. Doing good, doing good. I have a separate bucket I sift in. Good back and forth on the frass and the eggs there. I love it. I'm testing a small sample of mealworms on styrofoam and water beads. No substrate or veggies. Awesome. Hey, Keith, let us know how that goes. When I did that years ago, what I found is like they'll eat it. They'll do fine. They'll go through generations. No big deal. It doesn't seem like I don't want to say they didn't enjoy it, but what I found is the little pieces of styrofoam just gunked everything up. And so, like, from a process perspective or usability perspective, right? Like, jury's still out on the frass and how that, it still has some of the chemical components of the styrofoam in there, and all that needs to be studied. But let's pretend for a second that frass is okay in an ideal world, right? It's okay. To separate out the styrofoam from the frass is going to become a problem, I think, because it doesn't seem like they were eating it enough. Now, maybe once that's their only source of styrofoam in that bin, maybe they'll go after it at that point. I don't know, but keep us updated. It was a pretty fun experiment when I did it. I couldn't believe that it actually worked, to be honest. So, Sue with some info on refrigerated. Love it. If you don't mind, how much do you produce per month in kilograms? I produce 1 million mealworms a month. The goal is 2 million. And I think that's what will fit in this, in the 1,100 square feet that I have. So I would need to do some quick math, Mohammed. So 1 million mealworms a month. If I divide that by 10,000, that's 100 times roughly 200 pounds. So then pounds, kilograms, it's 2.2, but I can't do that math in my head. I'm not going to try 200. 90 kilograms a month right now, Mohammed, roughly. And that, we can scale that in the current facility size we're in here. The insect room is 1,100 square feet. And so we can get, by my estimations, we'll be able to double that production in that room. So we should be able to get 2 million a month, or 180 kilograms, roughly. So. Thank you, Keith. They have to eat the small styrofoam the second and third time. Maybe, yeah. Yes, not the math again, right? At least I got through it that time. The other time I had to give up. Any idea what the nutritional content would be with mealworms raised on styrofoam in terms of feeding to poultry and reptiles? Any hazards to consider? I don't think so, Sue. I'm trying to remember the study. Stanford did a study in 2019, 2020, somewhere around there, where they fed the mealworms nothing but styrofoam and water. And then they tested the mealworm 24, 48, and 72 hours. So after 24 hours, there were still chemical components of the styrofoam in the insect. 48 hours, there was less. 72 hours, there was none. And so they didn't have any of the styrofoam components, chemicals, micro type things, like microplastics come to mind, right? They didn't have any of that in their body. The frass had some in the frass itself. And so what I think the study was saying is that the mealworms did not have any negative impacts to them as they were consuming it. And then once it was gone out of their system in 72 hours, it was perfectly fine as a feed source, because it's not like you were then feeding your chickens, poultry, chickens, reptiles, etc., styrofoam, which you wouldn't want to do, right? And so the mealworms were okay. The frass, that the jury's still out. That needs to be studied to see how that impacts the growth of the plant, the fruiting of the plant, right? Like, where does that stuff go? And so that's the potential. I don't want to say hazard, but like, it's not a solution to the problem of styrofoam styrofoam yet, because are we just making it tiny as styrofoam, right? But from a feed perspective for the mealworms, it was okay. 72 hours and all the trace is gone. Yep. Well, it lines up, Wally, with like what the light bulb that went off in my head was when you guys dust the insects for or do gut loading, you guys feed those off within 48 to 72 hours, right? Like you know that you need to feed those off pretty quick, or else the nutrients aren't there. Somebody knew that, right? But to start that whole thing, and so it makes sense that styrofoam is the same way. It's just really, really good to get the scientific, like Stanford did their thing to analyze that chemically to make sure, like to see what was happening, and so that was just really, really cool. That Stanford link is somewhere in this group. We've posted it multiple times. I can go back and try to find it. But if you search, I bet if we search Stanford in the group, you'll find the link to it. Probably some posts from me and other people as well. So, all right, we are at the top of the hour. Gut loading, I feed within 4 to 6 hours. Dusting, I feed immediately. Okay, interesting. Thank you, sir. All right, so we'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. We have another session on Monday, so kind of real short back-to-back, but Monday's a holiday here in the U.S., so I thought it might be a good opportunity for more folks to join. So we've got a session on Monday. This one will get posted to the Facebook group with all the comments once Facebook reviews it and approves it and knows we haven't done anything bad. And then I will take that, get it up to YouTube. I'll go through all the comments and questions here as well, so if anything didn't get answered, I'll reply to that. If you guys need anything from me, throw it out in the group, or you can shoot it to me directly, justin@midwestmealworms.com. Happy to help. And if you have anything you want to see in the farm, I'm going to try to do that. I think Monday will be a good day to go into the farm as well. So if there's anything you see that you want more details on, just hit me up and we'll try to make that happen. Thank you all very much. Have an awesome weekend. Really appreciate everybody jumping in and providing feedback, responding, things like that. You guys are awesome, and we'll do this again. Thank you.